Hi folks, in this video we're going to talk about the distribution equivalence, which is another Boolean equivalence principle. You're already familiar with De Morgan's and double negation. Those two principles really concern how negation behaves. It tells you how, for example, to push a negation symbol onto a disjunction. What you do is you flip it to a conjunction and the negation goes onto each of the parts. Or how do you push a negation onto a conjunction? It flips to a disjunction. Or two negation symbols is just equivalent to not having any. Distribution concerns the relationship between conjunction and disjunction. So for example, let's say that we have a sentence that's a wide scope conjunction. How do we distribute this onto a disjunction or vice versa? The thing that I'm going to recommend, this is how I suggest visualizing it. See the conjunction, this first sentence, the P and, as a unit. That's a chunk. And what I would tell you to do is put it onto each of the disjuncts. The first disjunct is Q, so I put P and onto that. The second disjunct is complex, not R. You put the P and onto that. So that's why I've colored P and red here. This is a unit that I want you to sort of see as that those things necessarily go together. Now, what we haven't done is accounted for this or yet. What happens with the or is it actually just drops down and becomes the new main connective. So there's no flipping of connectives. Sometimes people think that it goes from an and this and flips to an or, but I think that's actually a recipe for disaster. That's not the best way to think about these. De Morgan's is different. Remember when I told you about De Morgan's previously, this does involve flipping. You see, this or actually does become an and. This flipping goes on here, but in distribution, it's quite different. I recommend thinking of this and as becoming this and this and this or just drops right down, so there's no flipping needed. Now, it works for conjunction over disjunction. It also works perfectly well for disjunction over conjunction. And you can distribute from the left or you can distribute from the right. The thing to pay attention to, it all comes down to the main connective, because what we're distributing is whatever's the main connective. It doesn't matter which side it happens to be on. You see, this disjunction is the main connective, so I can distribute or S, and I can put it first onto the Q, and then I put it onto the not R, so it would look like this. And again, the other narrow scope connective, the and here, just drops down, and that becomes the new main connective. So if you visualize these as chunks in this way, I think this is the way to keep it all straight in your head. Now, it does get more complicated, however, because in these examples, the S has been simple and atomic, but you can actually get fancier and you can let both of them be complex. So apply the distribution to this. This is I want to see if you can figure this out. My recommendation is forget the fact that this is complex. Treat this as a unit. Again, just treat this as like it's an atomic sentence and distribute this thing over onto these. So use what you've already learned. So pause your videos and to see if you can push this sentence, push this disjunction, the wide scope disjunction, onto one of these conjunctions. Okay, that was your chance to pause your videos. This is what I get when I do it. If I distribute this disjunction, I have to pick a side, and it doesn't matter. It's going to be equivalent, whichever one I do. I'm just going to go left to right because I find that easier to visualize. This is my whole unit because this is like the first atomic sentence before. This chunk I put on the Q and I put it on the R. So that's why I get M and N or, that's my chunk Q, and then the same thing or R. And this and, that thing drops down to become my new main connective. Now notice though, you have to keep all these parentheses here because we have mixtures of connectives. The connectives keep flipping, and so you can't drop any of these parentheses or we would get problems. Now, the goal was to make disjunction narrow scope, and we're not there yet because this conjunction is still narrow scope. We've gotten one of the conjunctions narrower than the disjunction, but we haven't got it all the way. All you have to do is to keep going. We need to push this further. Okay, or I think I misspoke. Let me say this conjunction is now wider scope on the disjunction. This one is still narrower scope though. So we need to push this disjunction. We pushed it onto one of them. We need onto this one. We need to keep pushing it onto this one. Now we're going to go from right to left, and we need to do it for both of these. So pause your videos here and see if you can figure out the rest of the problem. How do we keep using distribution to make all of the disjunctions narrow? Okay, that was your last chance to work it out. This is what it looks like. I take this disjunction and now I'm pushing it onto this conjunction. So that's why I get M or Q and I get N or Q. And I take this disjunction, the or R, and I put it onto M and I put it onto N. And again, this one is my main connective, of course, so it drops down here. Then once I push R onto these, that one drops down to here, this one drops down to here. It's the same, it's structurally the exact same pattern that we saw before. And now, of course, now we don't have a mixture of ands and ors flipping back and forth. We need these parentheses around the or, but what I could do is I could drop these outermost parentheses, because these conjunctions, oh look, I did it on one of them to sort of illustrate the idea. See, I could drop these parentheses on this one because these ands are all coordinate with each other. So this outermost set could be dropped. What I cannot drop is these parentheses, keeping the ors together, because then I would have a problematic mixture of my ands and ors. So distribution allows you to push any number of conjunctions onto disjunctions. It doesn't matter how complex these get. You can push it all the way through to make one of the other either connective narrow scope or wide scope. So that's how the distribution principle works. We'll just add it to our list of Boolean equivalences. Okay, thanks.